Great. And may I invite our panelists, Chris, Guy, Sandeep, and Vijay to the stage, please. Let's see. There? All right.
Huh?
Distanced.
No, I said almost feels you need to follow the picture.
All right. What I would like to start our discussion with is the question from your perspective, and I start with the operators among you. Has COVID-19 provide to be a catalyst, a trigger for change? And what do you see as perhaps temporary? And what do you see as sustainable change? Sandeep, if you would like to start with this.
Yeah, I think the one-word answer would be yes. I think COVID is a catalyst to change by any means. I think it's almost like a accelerator of things. A few of the trends that we see today in hotels had kind of started already, and COVID just accelerated it. Giving an example or two. I mean, if you look at first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about innovation is technology, which is not the only form of innovation, but let's start from there. We'd started pre-COVID, so for example, at Marriott we have Marriott Bonvoy, which is a reward program. And as a member, you can go into the app, you can book a room, you can choose the view from the room, you can check in, and now you can even take the phone and go and use it as a key card to go into the room. This was a technology that started pre-COVID, but I think with COVID, this whole need of going contact light, to your point about QR codes with menus, we felt more the need to go ahead with it faster than usual, so it was a bit of a catalyst. And here we are today sitting with about 65% of our hotels in Middle East and Africa who have this technology, and we're talking about 300 hotels in this region. So certainly, I think COVID has been a catalyst, but technology is not the only form of innovation. I think it's also the opportunities we see that come with it. So for example, we saw, even where we're sitting in Dubai, a lot of people shifting from apartments into extended stay. So they could get the kitchenette, but yet have somebody else take care of the hygiene, the cleanliness, and have all the amenities. And today we see so many more brands that we are getting into with residents in Element, Marriott Executive Apartments with extended stays. So certainly to your question back, it has been a catalyst, and we've seen a lot of new trends coming in, including staycations, which has led to localization. So a lot of trends which had started, but now of course have got speeded up.
Guy, your perspective on that?
Absolutely. You know, it's amazing how innovative you get when you're fighting for survival. You know, so when you hit that brick wall of business, you better innovate, otherwise you die. So it's definitely been a strong driver of innovation in hotels, and it's forced us, I think, to really think and approach the model of how we operate very differently. And I think from smaller examples, you know, where rather than just a QR code, which became sort of a technical, restriction-driven approach, you know, we engaged a digital startup in the UAE, two bright young guys, and they've digitized our full food delivery service. So whether you're sitting in your room ordering room service or at the pool at your sunbed, like an Uber, you place your order and you can see exactly where it is in the delivery chain. And it's cut our delivery times by about 10 to 12 minutes and increased our revenues by about 19%. So there's examples like that where digitization has definitely come out of this experience. I think what's really important is not to focus on digitalization as a replacement of connectivity, of replacement of hospitality, but digitization in a way that it enables a customer journey. So, you know, and the no part of that is I sincerely hope we remove the word contactless from our hospitality vocabulary very, very quickly, because that's just not what we do. So this sort of aspect of that contactless, that social distancing, we're inherently social beings. So, you know, we're very much pushing to get back and to claw back those elements of our business as much as quickly as we can. But then looking very much at what we can learn from this experience and what we can use to catapult our customer experience and actually to enrich our customer experience moving forward.
Vijay, and now turn a little bit to the owner's perspective. And we saw innovation in terms of the operations that we just touched upon. Do you see also change in usage of hotel rooms?
Yeah, I mean, the hotel rooms in many cases have become multi-function, properties, you could say. And with Dubai encouraging visas for people who work online, we had quite a few cases of people who are just using the hotel as residence, come office, come use it as a proper resort when they are not actually working and with the family. So that's a trend which is currently on. Of course, people have started coming back to work. Probably we are about 30-40% people back at work. But the trend is still on in terms of multi-purpose usage of these properties.
Will it be there to stay, the multi-purpose of hotels, or is it a temporary because of the needs that we had triggered by COVID?
People will start going back to work, but perhaps not 9 to 5, 5 days a week. There will still be some flexibility. A lot of corporations are offering that to people as an incentive, in a way. And people are also, unfortunately, looking at downsizing their office spaces, which they would need, by even doing this kind of a rationalization of number of people they have in the office. We're already facing some of that in our properties.
Chris, I would now like to turn the perspective completely a little bit to the F&B point.
Sure.
What do you see from your perspective, focusing with White Rabbit, if I understand correctly, on the European market, right?
Yes, albeit with one in Japan.
One in Japan.
One in Japan, but mainly Europe at the moment. And yes, it comes to the previous piece. Hospitality market was pretty broken prior to COVID, and this has just absolutely accelerated matters. And the innovation that we had to, or the changes we had to put in place, going from a nice, fast-growing company to zero turnover in a very short period of time, it makes you move very quickly. But just to pick one of those, having to create flexible revenue streams from all of our food and beverage outlets. If I take Lena Stores, which was started as just a core pasta brand, that off the back of that, we created online grocery delivery platforms, or standard delivery pieces, wholesale, own brand retail. And they might sound like small changes, but they fundamentally change how we grow those around the world. And that you don't have to roll out multiples of these. You can land in one city, flagship sites, and have all those flexible revenue streams around them. So different thinkings on how we grow our brands today.
Which is also referring to what Guy said. It's a change in the customer experience, a complete change in the customer experience. Will it stop with like COVID slightly disappearing over the next couple of months, hopefully? Or is that only a start of a completely new trend? And that question goes to all of you.
If I can maybe take it, it's not new, right? I think, and
Yeah.
Sandeep was making reference to that. It's not new. This has definitely been an accelerant. I mean, technology and digital technology as a part of the customer journey, it wasn't invented with COVID, but it's certainly accelerated how it's been adopted, and it's certainly accelerated how larger companies are engaged with it and are viewing it, and how fast they're being adopted into the experience, I think.
And the fast adoption, I think it's great because if I remember the AHIC a couple of years ago, there was a lot of like the touchless hotel. 2 years now down the road, we are almost there. Having implemented that, has that thrown a lot of cost and additional capex on the owners, Vijay?
Yeah, of course, there were certain things which required initial capex. And obviously, with the discussion with the operators, we found the justification for going ahead with that. But we are sure this will pay back in a shorter period of time. And these are the times when we need to move with these trends. I heard today, actually, from the barista Nespresso, that you could actually program the coffee machine onto your phone. You don't even have to touch the coffee machine. You operate it from the phone in your room and get your coffee of your choice. So I'm sure the operators will come with a request very soon for that, Sandeep.
You know, I think I'll add one thing to what we're saying here. I think it's a choice. I think that's important as well from an operator's lens to say that there's a choice we give. So for example, going back to this technology example of the touchless check-in and going into the room without a key and just using your phone for it. Yes, it's great. We're kind of aiming, for example, I was giving a figure of 65% of our hotels. We are aiming to get to 100%, but at the end of the day, we're very aware that we need to maintain the choice. It needs to be the guest choice. That human connection, the human relationship is the most important in our industry. So I could be checking into the same hotel. Maybe I was coming in this morning from an X place and I have to come to the conference. I would love the app because I sit in a taxi, I check in, I don't need to go to meet anybody, straight head to the room. But if I'm coming with my family and it's a vacation, I might want to engage with the concierge, might want to get more choices from where to go, what to do, book some restaurants. So I think eventually it'll need to be also the fact that, yes, we have done that. COVID accelerated all this implementation, but in the future, I think the choice end of the day has to be with the guest. We can't forget, and we can't go completely touchless. So to your question, is it here to stay? I think it is here to stay, but the choice has to be the guest choice.
So it's an extension of the guest experience offering.
Absolutely.
There will always be the I call it human touch, direct interaction with someone, but there will always be, from now on, obviously, like, or from prepared already, like the digital way to enter a hotel. Is it the same for F&B?
Yeah, I think if anything, we've dialed up the customer experience piece because there's been so much pent-up demand for it. And actually, mid-pandemic, we took a wild leap and created our own in-house experiential events company to meet that demand that was coming afterwards. And yes, we have a whole load of tech that's progressed in the background, and we opened that restaurant in Japan. I opened that over Zoom. I still haven't been allowed into the country, and you can imagine the amount of tech and systems we put in place behind to make that work. But that's the events, the experiential piece, and overlaying that into all of our hospitality experiences has been a fundamental part now, and even more important than it was before.
Does it mean that the pent-up demand on F&B is now also needs to be complemented by experience, by entertainment within a food and beverage outlet?
Absolutely. I think it's now it depends on the brand. We have small poke restaurants where the experience comes in different formats. But yes, I think it's always trying to find that additional way to build further experience into what would historically be a standard breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Do you see this in the hotels coming as well, like this additional element, or is it?
Absolutely, yes and no. I mean, different requirements around different spaces. I think, coupled with innovation is fundamentals. And there are certain fundamentals around an F&B experience which don't change, right? And that's social, right? Nobody sits in an empty restaurant and enjoys it. Food may be amazing, but the fundamental is you're there for social reasons. So, technology in terms of how that deals with your booking process and your feedback process, but there's, I think, always going to be that need for experience in an F&B, because no matter how good the food is or how good the design is, if you don't have the ambience, if you don't have the experience, it doesn't work.
All others are enablers to the social experience of an F&B.
We're inherently social species.
We are.
And that's why it will always be a fundamental.
Do you actually see, if you now look at the guests, the customers, are they behaving different? Are they more cautious? Are they coming back hungry to socialize? Is there any difference now?
You can't generalize, I think. You know,
I'm not
because,
generalizing it. I
we're
just wonder if
five
if
people on the stage, we will have five different approaches to this,
Yes,
right?
sure.
And so there's a broad response in terms of how people are responding it. Some people haven't been out to a restaurant in 2 years and don't want to go for another 2 years. Some people have been going out to restaurants irrespective for the last 2 years. And you have everything in between. But I think by and large, certainly in this region, F&B has been an absolute lifeline. It's been, before hotels recovered, F&B is what actually sustained us from a profitability perspective, sustained the hotels, sustained the costs, the operating costs, sustained the salaries of staff. F&B is an absolute lifeline for us in the region. So it's really been core to surviving and coming out of COVID. So I don't think this is going to go away, and customers are all approaching this very, very individually. But by and large, there's very strong demand for F&B, and there's very strong demand coming back for travel.
Does it include delivery?
Absolutely. And this is a space where hotels need to think extremely differently. So in some of our service department operations now, we're actually building them, designing them, so they work with aggregators. So not with the kitchen, but basically we're purpose building them so that we know we can attach an aggregator to it. And then in-house, you've got a choice of 25 brands, but equally then that is used as a platform to serve as a catchment area. And we negotiate a part of that business. So absolutely.
But I think I'll add to that piece of beside F&B is you take cleanliness. I think it's a subject that we have spoken enough about in the last year and a half, that how cleanliness has become the number one need. In fact, even pre-COVID, we did a survey about 6 years back. Even in the luxury space, the number one requirement, or the number one thing which came in the survey was the cleanliness is the most important. Now here we are in COVID world where that's a given, that it has to be. But I feel there are a few changes one is seeing, like to your question, even in the housekeeping or the cleanliness pieces, people like to see a bit more visual or feel comfortable when it's visual. I give an example or two. Earlier, if you had to go to a luxury hotel and to find stickers on the marble which says social distancing in the elevator of a certain distance, you would be saying, really? You're putting stickers on the floor. But today, when you walk in and you see it, I think it gives a sense to the guest that, okay, the hotel is concerned and is maintaining social distancing. When you go to the check-in counter, again in a hotel, to have a small, nicely done, let's say a tray which has used pens and clean pens, you would never find this earlier. It would be almost, people would look at it and say, how awkward is that? But today, when the guests they look at each other and say, the hotel is looking after cleanliness because you're keeping the used pens on the side, and these are the clean ones. So I think the visual part is also something that has come out a bit more, for sure.
Would hotel owners, Vijay, from your perspective, consider to back integrate into food and beverage platforms that Guy has mentioned? Would they go there to extend their offering?
Yeah, in terms of course, some of the hotels have large F&B within their own property, but I think the trend is towards integration, of course, subject to compliance with the local HACCP and other, hygiene-related requirements. One other point is, although we talk about COVID and the capex and so on, COVID has really also given us an opportunity to go lean and mean on many operations. When the revenue levels, fell to unprecedented kind of, numbers, people had to really innovate on cost reductions, and some of these are to stay for forever. This could be in terms of manning numbers, it could be any other cost which are controllable. People were forced to do it last year, and some of them might continue, and that's the interest of both the operator and owners.
Let's turn the focus a little bit on the region that we are all living in and working in, which is the Middle East. For all these changes, be it digital, be it hygiene, be it the delivery models, is the Middle East, as an entire industry perspective, ready for that change, prepared for this change?
Without a doubt. I think this is one of the most innovative regions in the world. And I think, and there's also a certain agility in the way that investment works in this part of the world, because in most cases, when you're working with investors, it's not institutional. So you're working much closer with ownership groups like Aramco and other conglomerates in the region. And when you're working individual to individual, this is a much more conversation. Sometimes we get challenged by investors.
Really?
Yes, sometimes we get challenged by investors to go, listen, we signed a management agreement 8 years ago. Our hotel, the design is 5 years old. We're now going to open in 2 years from now. Go away, redo the design because I want something which is current. So I think when you're dealing with an investment community, which is structured the way it is here, the ownership community is far more agile and far more focused on making sure that their product and what they bring to market when it's ready to come to market is fit for purpose. And I think that's much more, it's much more fast moving, it's much more agile in this region where, as opposed to spaces where you're dealing with pension fund or more institutional ownership.
So it's a little bit triggered by the mindset of the ownership?
Yes, it's a balance
good.
between that, because it's a personal relationship again. It's not not other people's money. This is it's in a very individual space.
I'll add to that with the only person who doesn't have any hospitality in the region, but just I've been to numbers of hospitality conferences, and it's incredibly refreshing to have heard, not only today, but speak to people outside, the excitement about the F&B and the opportunities within F&B within a hotel perspective, which is still incredibly rare, and historically there's still stands that people not wanting to have restaurants in their buildings. So from the excitement I've seen just in the one day, I think absolutely.
You actually preempted my question.
Right.
Because I was about to let them give their perspective and then ask, do you see this elsewhere as well? So how is it? Is it different in Europe? It seems to be.
Yes, is the answer.
How?
Look, there are phenomenal hotel operators across Europe, but and I was commercial director for the Soho House Group, and that is one where you look at the Ned, and it was doing £1 million a week in F&B alone on the ground floor, and the Hoxton Hotel Group, incredibly profitable ground floor restaurant. Some people who do it incredibly well, but there are numerous hotel operators who still just want to do breakfast, and they want to design a breakfast room. We've just launched 6 new totally bespoke restaurants across hotel portfolios from an operator who said, we want to give that to restaurant operators rather than design a breakfast room.
Marriott is obviously a global operator. Do you see differences in the adoption of and integration of changes that have been triggered over the past 2 years in the different territories?
I think I'll connect that question as well to your previous question about this region. 2 points to be made. One is, I think, the fact that if you had to make a curve, and I think you had some of the numbers on the screen, but if you add 21 and start comparing it to Europe or some other parts of the world, I think Middle East has done an amazing job. We're sitting in Dubai, UAE. I think the leadership did a brilliant job in how they dealt with the COVID. I mean, nobody knew how it was going to be, but I think we had an early lockdown. We had cleanliness campaigns. We had early adoption of vaccines when they came out. If one compares the vaccination rates in the Middle Eastern countries, they're much higher, and some which were kind of lagging behind have already caught up now. So I think the speed at which things have been happening here has been, and there are a few reasons to it, I guess, but they have been doing very well, and that has really helped and aided in the business. So to your question of how Marriott has been doing, yes, for us globally, China came back first. It's locked up, as you said, but there's a lot of domestic market within China, so they've done well. US started to do well, but then it was actually Middle East, UAE has done well. We look at Turkey, we look at Qatar, we look at Jordan, which recently opened, all have kind of gone at a faster speed. The second thing I would connect back to is food and beverage. I mean, with these lockdowns, You mentioned about words that came up, and staycation is one word that came up during this COVID times. And it just started, I used to say, I feel that will it really catch up for the rest of the business loss? And it actually did for us in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, and it was all about localization. And within that localization, I think the important part was F&B and the restaurants. And when you look at hotels, I think you were trying to make a point there about hotels in Europe. F&B in hotels in Middle East is way more evolved. We had somebody visit us from within our company, and they said the F&B scene in hotels in Middle East or in UAE is Asia on steroids. It is moving much faster, so certainly it has much more advantage.
So from that perspective, is the Middle East perhaps leading the pack in terms of recovery in the hospitality industry?
From an occupancies, absolutely yes, it is.
Yeah.
The good part is, the green shoot is that we start now seeing the markets in Europe also catch up. Greece saw great occupancies, and different pockets within Europe have. UK had a lot of domestic occupancy again, but in terms of an overall number, if you see, yes, for sure, Middle East had started the trend. Not all countries in Middle East, but certainly countries like UAE, Qatar, Turkey, as I alluded to Jordan as well. So that's been for sure promising. And I think what we're seeing is also that clearly leisure came first, but we're also starting to see a bit of green shoots on business travel. The numbers will be the real proof of that conversation. But our sales team recently did a survey with about 370 of different companies, and about 37 of them actually came back saying that they are comfortable traveling right now for business, and about another 50% said 5 to 6 months later they would be. So let's see if that comes true, but there is a comfort zone coming in. So I think that's the good part of the industry catching up.
I think if I can add to that,
sure,
Mark,
go ahead.
if you look at it, I think Middle East is very clearly leading the region. And if you look at the data across the rates of recovery, not just in occupancy, but in rate and RevPAR, because this region, pre-pandemic occupancy was back in Q1. It was the evolution of RevPAR that is the game changer. And if you look at the growth rates comparing Middle East destinations to other global destinations, New York, Paris, London, the growth rate in the Middle East is clearly accelerated. So the recovery is clearly accelerated. And there are very few destinations around the world that have that cohesiveness of destination marketing, which we benefit from, the quality of destination marketing in our regions, infrastructure with airlines and the connectivity with airlines, and then the hospitality and travel industry. That connectivity exists in perhaps one other or two other markets I can think of globally, maybe Singapore, but it's a unique connectivity with an industry, absolutely spurred growth, and that's why this region is very much ahead of the curve in recovery.
So what's then on the card next for Aramco? Is it expansion? Is it first settle, get the portfolio back to where it was perhaps pre-COVID? Or is it both in parallel?
Both in parallel. Our ongoing properties are still being pushed ahead to be completed at the earliest. We're coming up with 3 large properties in the next 6-8 months. And I think, unfortunately, when the world started opening in the last 4-5 months, this market was traditionally into its weakest period of Ramadan and summer. So I think the best is yet to come in terms of we are entering the right season, and as more markets open up for us, and there are also already indications that perhaps the fourth quarter of 21 would be better than fourth quarter of 19. I'm sure Sandeep will deliver that.
He's revising my forecast already.
It's your budget.
But would you? I like very much the statement of Samir. And I do a lot of feasibilities. I would not look at a feasibility if there's not a crisis here in it. I like very much that statement because, quite honestly, we don't build that in.
Yep.
Not yet. Do we have to?
Well, I think Mr. Savaris said that if he is given a forecast and he does not see any bad year considered in that, he said he would not even look at it. So obviously, COVID helped us really, look at ourselves inward and be more nimble, gave an opportunity to be more lean and mean. And if that works together with the surge in tourism, that's the best we could hope for.
Having such a panel here on stage, I would also like to give the audience the opportunity to ask questions if there are any. I can't see that, but nothing? All right. Then I would like to give each of you the possibility or the opportunity to have a closing statement in terms of where do you see the way forward, given what COVID has triggered in terms of change, in terms of innovation. What's next? And start at the back end, just Vijay, please.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has really shaken all of us, and this industry probably the worst of other industries. What next? I mean, we need to, as some countries like Singapore say, we need to get to live with COVID, and COVID is no more a scary, unknown animal. It's something which can be controlled. We only hope that the entire the world gets vaccinated soon so that all of us are safe, and we hope the next AHIC will be without masks.
For me, it would be about people. I think having gone through this tough phase of COVID in terms of how our industry has been, and it's quite evident that we suffered the most. But it's been a harsh drop and a good pickup. But I think I would be thankful to our associates who've kind of gone through that tough phase with us, and it's proven again that it's all about our people, and people make the difference, and especially in our industry where as operators we don't own hotels, we own brands. People are the ones who actually bring it to life. So it's about people, and I think people would be the most important asset. They were, they are, and they'll continue to be even more important.
I think we've had a strong reset message, and the theme of the conference is very apt, So we've had this really strong reset message, and we've been brought back to a very much more cohesive space as an industry, as a destination, particularly in this region, where, through growth and expansion and scale, we may have lost a little bit of sight, but we've had a very hard lesson in the last 18 months, and we've learned basically how strong we can be as an industry when we're led by the likes of DTCM here in Dubai, who have done, I'd like to make a note, an absolutely amazing job in leading this destination out of recovery. But we've seen that connectivity with destination leadership, government leadership, airline, hotels, coming together much more cohesively as an industry to drive the destination and the recovery of the destination, and then sort out competition at a later stage. And for me, I sincerely hope that we keep that focus moving forward. It's brought us competitive advantage now.
Yep.
We should not lose that focus as we go into the future.
Yeah. Well said.
In the minus 10 seconds we have, all I'd say is, for those who can innovate now, it's possibly the most exciting period you'll ever see in your lifetimes for hospitality, and there's huge opportunities with that reset that's taken place. So, yeah, very exciting time.
Thank you very much to all of you, and I give the stage back to Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin, thank you so much for a wonderful session. It was very transparent, very honest. I love some of the innovation that's going on. But one question I have for you, do we need to wait for a war, or do we need to wait for a virus? Do we need to wait for a crisis to innovate? Because that's what you were showing on your presentation. Do we need to have that in order for us to innovate?
I think if you would like to have a quantum leap innovation event, it needs a trigger. All these triggers were pretty negative triggers. But there are obviously very positive triggers as well. That could be technology interventions, innovations, and therefore, I hope going forward we don't need negative triggers anymore, but we have whatever kind of an event that then basically triggers a huge change, a quantum leap change in an industry.
Okay, one final question for you then. What is the next big event?
I would say one. Let me give you two. I think we will see another pandemic, whatever shape or form. If we look back into the TED Talk that Bill Gates gave in 2015, you would think he gave a description of what is currently happening. On the other side, I would say for the industry, it's, I think, to now take a reset and take that reset positively in integrating these changes and making the pent-up demand and the experience that the customer gets out of this re-emerging of traveling a very, very good one going forward.
Okay, excellent. Please show your appreciation to Dr. Martin Berlin.
Thank you.